Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about multi-arch supporting OpenStack. I'm Rico Lin from EasyStack, and we have Jeremy from Red Hat. So if you find anything interesting, you can find us on IRC or through emails. So both Jeremy and I are members in OpenStack MultiArch SIG. So before we start talking about MultiArch support, let's let's give the definition of what is multi-arch exactly. So multi-arch is meant to be all kind of a CPU architecture, including x86, including On64, and under OpenStack in last 10 years, OpenStack reached a very good support for x86 platform, and then we find out that there's other needs for other architecture as well, but the support in communities is not quite there. So that comes out with the idea to have a multi-arch SIG and to trying to driving and encourage those efforts to in on top of OpenStack communities and make it be let's say better place. So that means we're going to plan to maybe documentations, building test job, tracking issues, and to build an entire ecosystem for different kind of a CPU architecture. So so we forming this SIG, and we need more hands to help us to keep driving things. What we find out is that we currently still short of hands. So we're driving things slow but steady in progress. It would be nice to have more hands so we can drive things faster. It would be nice to have people to donate their servers so we can have those resources on top of the current community uh, testing gateway. Uh, So we also have bi-week meetings if you want to join us. That's on Tuesday to cover your time zones. If not, you can find us. We can discuss about that. We also have SIG storyboard and documentations. There will be more introductions about how to join us or the information about the SIG. So regarding on what exactly we are planning to do and support, there are so there are a lot of things that we will plan to do. The very first thing uh, we found out very useful will be to have a CI/CD environment on top of current OpenStack community. I mean, in the OpenStack community, to actually allow us to testing and including unit tests, scenario tests, so we can guarantee those code we shipped out will be able to run stable and to reach better performance on top of a different kind of a CPU architecture. Also, we are looking for packaging those services for specific for each CPU architectures. So you do not need to do some nasty things to convert those packages or trying to see if those work only work, um, and which will be hugely affect the performance if you're trying to do so. There's also documentations and tracking bugs that we think that if we want to support a different kind of CPU architecture on top of OpenStack, uh, the documentation is very essential because people need to know what exactly they need to config, and people need to know what exactly uh, they should be aware of and what is the concept. So documentation is very essential. Also, to tracking those bugs that we find out on the way to building the testing or to packaging is also a thing that to recording down and to allow other CPU architectures to be able to know that what exactly is the place when they're trying to replace the current CPU architecture to others. So to tracking those bugs also allowed us to allow developers to know what exactly is the issue now, so we can easily get help from to share those tracking story in storyboard to say we need more hands on projects. And also finally, we need to make sure those deployment tools are able to install those specific CPU architecture easily. So those are like the basic thinking of how we should tackling a support CPU architecture. As you can see, that testing is very essential in this kind of a targeting goal for if we want to say we want to support this a different architecture. So the first thing we want to talk about is basically On64, because at the very beginning that we start to supporting On is that thanks to Linaro, so they donate the servers to the OpenStack Foundation, and so the OpenStack get to using those servers to build the upstream CIs to actually trying to testing how the ARM performance and try to test, so we can start to thinking about how we can use those servers testing unit test or scenario test. So that's like the very beginning of the entire plan to say, hey, we see there are resources for ARM64 now, and appears there's already some of the work in progress things in OpenStack already to trying to push in the support for the ARM64. And so let's say, hey, if we can have this, so we start to think about one more test we can do. And that the very first thing, and thanks to Ian from the MultiArch SIG, we have a separate pipeline here to it is check on 64. So if you want to push a job for on 64, and you can push it to this pipeline. Just be gentle, because this pipeline currently we are only have Linaro provide about maximum 40 servers, so we still need more resources to for our CI/CD environment. So if your company are interested in share your and donate your servers to OpenStack Foundation, please do so. We will try to make sure those servers are well used, and in long run, I don't know, we can even like having more different kind of servers to do the comparison, and to make sure that we help each one to cover different cover testing report, so everybody will be happy. So right now, this from this pipeline and from the Linaro servers, we can build CentOS, Debian, and Ubuntu images. And so at this example that we now have a CI/CD environment ready, so we start to thinking about what testing we should do. And one of the testing we think we need to do is unit test. So we define the unit tests in project templates, which running under check on 64, and to run a job that is to running using Tux to running Python 3.8 on ARM64 architecture. And under that job, you will running on Ubuntu Bionic, and Right now, that job is still not voting. Um, we have proof of concept to run the job, to sending patches to some of the core services to run the job. But right now, we're not trying to pushing anything before we can have proper discussions on what exactly we would like to ask each team to run the job and to do the unit test. Because we need to make sure that we need to make sure that the current testing environment is stable and we be able to run at the capacity we have. So the job is the project template is there. You can add that project template. I mean, to run the Python 3 job on the On64 in your project. But we're still under the discussion on how we can use that. So if you run it under your project, you will be able to have a separate pipelines to actually and you will run in for the Python 3 job, which currently is Python 3.8. We will do more, but we just want to make sure that everything is doing correctly, not overusing those resources. Furthermore, we are planning the scenario test, and the scenario test is to run in DevStack support. We have the DevStack support patch sent up we actually, like, thanks to Kevin, who've been working on that a lot, and but the status is still under low success rate. We still have doing some debugging because there might be performance issue that we may run default value, or some of the test is not designed for On64. And also we are facing the current Nova reboot test is failing, but we're still trying to figure out what exactly is the cause of that. And also there's a time out performance issue. But once we have the DevStack support ready, we should be able to use that job to actually running specific technical job, functional test, scenario test to covering other test scenario. But right now, as we can see, that most of the testing job that we're running with Tempest, we're running with Tempest under DevStack testing settings is mostly all passing. Mostly passing success, and just some of the failures we need to figure out what exactly is that. Because if we need to deliver the job and use this using this as a job as a testing template, we need to make sure it is very stable and is easily to use. So that is the thing that we're still fighting for. And we also think about wheel support. So right now we have a wheel support to catching and push publish to Python libraries. But to think about to have a wheel support, actually also to build On64 packages is very, I think it's very straightforward thing. I don't think right now we have a proper way to do it. But thanks to Ian, who is keep pushing this forward. So I think we're looking forward to have properly packing for On64 environments and for those services we deliver. So that means that those proper packages for specific architecture for On64 specifically in this case, we will be able to make those packages more stable, make the Python library more stable to use, and probably will be increase the performance and to resolve a lot of issues we're facing. That is also under working. So probably we need to start with dependencies, and then we will going to go forward with with the services we have in OpenStack. Also, we're talking about packaging. Also like container support to auto build container images. There's a patch for it, but it's abandoned. But the discussion should be going, so feel free to join. Heat agents, we have containers to using MultiArch to build the images, but it's still work in progress, which is not merged. Kubernetes cloud provider OpenStack is already support to have container images to build for multi-architecture. Also, the document support is we have general document support thanks to Jeremy, but we are not yet to have like fully support on how exactly everything is going. We have some bugs currently tracking, and Kevin solved a lot of bugs of that, and Ian as well. So we have more things need to keep pushing. Also, I mentioned there's a conflict different. Like the default is different for different architecture. We need to find a way to easier solving that. Also test performance issue. So we have other tracking bugs on the way. So you can check on our storyboard. There's more tracking from the stories to find those bugs. So let's back to Jeremy to the next architecture.
Thanks, Rico. Next, we'll be talking about the status of support for PPC 64 Little Endian and OpenStack. First, a bit of history. For a long time, there's been a team that's worked on support for Power VM and Nova. But now that we have Power 9 with better support for KVM, and there's growing developer interest in OpenPower, it makes sense to tackle support for all of OpenStack on Power, not just Nova. That said, these efforts are still in a fairly early stage. The biggest limitation at the moment is that there's no Power hardware in node pool, so that pretty severely limits what we can do for testing and CI upstream for Power. Given all of that, there has been some notable progress for packaging and other artifacts for Power, namely with Ardio and CentOS artifacts. For packages, we have packages for CentOS 7 and 8 for the relevant versions of OpenStack, for Power, actually, as well as for ARM. And for containers, likewise, containers build are available for Power. Specifically, call it containers, which TripleO then modifies, as well as TripleO now has its new type of container separate from Kala, which will also support Power. As for other distros and projects, there is no support for Power yet. We recognize that not every distro will have a user base that uses Power, but if there is interest, we do hope to address it. On the topic of Ardio and CentOS, various work was done to add support for Power in TripleO. With most deployment tools, the only difference between architectures is where the content comes from, different package repositories and different container registries. But in the TripleO case, there was a desire to add support for deploying a heterogeneous cloud. So that meant pulling content from multiple sources, distinguishing nodes by architecture. Additionally, because TripleO also handles hardware provisioning, we found that the Power hardware that we were using for development, the IPMI credentials of those machines did not have a username, which is part of the IPMI spec. The username is optional, but TripleO, because no one had ever tried it with Power hardware before, had a mandatory username field, so this all has to be resolved. So overall, TripleO served as a good case study for what would be needed for the heterogeneous cloud use case and other considerations for multi-architecture. And so as work continues with with other deployment tools to support multiple architecture, it's good to keep this in mind. I know that Kala Ansible actually does support ARM already, although I believe this is just the homogeneous use case. Now I'll talk about other architectures besides Power and ARM, because the SIG is actually not limited to just those two architectures. So for S390X or IBM mainframe, there has been some work in Kala, mostly just focusing on some dependency issues and minor issues like that related to packaging. There's also a team that works on ZVM support in Nova, but in general, to my knowledge, S390X is not really a main focus for anyone for OpenStack at this time. For MIP64, I do know of one vendor who's working on adding support in Nova for that architecture, specifically in the Nova libvirt driver. So if anyone who is employed by that vendor is watching this presentation, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear about what you're doing and keep track of that effort as best we can. And on that note, it's also good, I'll talk about how people can get involved with the multi-architecture special interest group. So this week, earlier today actually, there was a presentation about the status of ARM for OpenStack, and then went into quite a bit more detail than we covered today. I'm sure that recording will be available permanently online. And tomorrow there is a forum session hosted by the Multi-architecture SIG, a birds of a feather session, just to see who's interested in multiple architectures, what sort of priorities should the special interest group be set, set, and just other general discussion related to anything about multiple architectures in OpenStack. And then in the following week, we do have the PTG. We have 2 sessions suitable to various time zones. And we hope to actually hack on some stuff. And again, depending on those priorities that we set during the forum session, explore various possibilities and connect multiple parties and hope get as much progress as we can for multiple architectures and set the stage for future work. So I do hope you contribute during those PTG sessions, and forum sessions, but if not, SIG members are always available on IRC anytime. We look at the mailing list. We have meetings every 2 weeks suitable to various time zones. And we accept reports of any kind on Storyboard, be it bugs, requests for enhancements, or anything really. Yeah, so with that, thank you everyone for watching this pre-recorded content. Thank you, Rico, for your pre-recorded part. I think now we'll turn it over to live Q&A. Thank you.